Can you play the first slide? It's actually a video, so I was hoping that it would play before, but I'm not sure if it's, yeah, there we go.
You are being robbed. Your money is being debased. Your hard work is being cheapened. The very fabric of society is deteriorating. Everything that once held value is declining, and the culprit is fiat money. Fiat money may be unfamiliar to you, but its effects are not. Where are the moon bases we dreamed of? Why are there so many wars and economic crises? Why does everything we consume break in an instant or make us fat? How can we feel so disconnected despite our constant online connections? And why in a consumer-driven society do we get so little satisfaction? Join us on our journey to unpack all of these questions and to learn why life is getting harder, working longer hours still earns you less pay, and how there may still be a path to getting back some of your precious time with your loved one. Get your copy of Fiat Ruins Everything today.
All right, that was a trailer for my book. Just wanted to have that in there. Okay. All right, so my talk is called Escaping the Golden Handcuffs, and I wanted to start with this picture. This is a picture of a prison in Ushuaia, Argentina. And I got to visit this place last year, and it is one of the most remote places in the world. And it's an interesting prison, and that's where it is. It's at the very bottom of South America, and you can see that it is very remote. And the reason why they built that there was because it is remote. It's very hard to escape. And in fact, they would often have the prisoners work just out in the open, and they had them, build fences or something like that, or grow vegetables or whatever it is. And somebody visited and said, "Well, how can you do this? Well, aren't they going to run away? These are prisoners." And they said, "Well, where would they go?" Because the thing to know about Ushuaia is that it is surrounded by Patagonia, and it looks like this. It is a very unhospitable environment. And what would happen to a lot of those prisoners, if they did try to run away, is that they would come back after a few days because they couldn't find any food. Whatever escape that they tried to do would come back to bite them because they couldn't survive in a wilderness like this. And it's for that reason that Argentina built a prison colony there. Now, I tell you this story because, in a sense, that's how we all feel with our fiat jobs, right? Like, how are we going to survive in this vast wilderness? Or am I able to get out of this thing? And that's what I want to talk about. And it's related to this thing that I got to do. So last year, I traveled the world went to all of these places. That's Machu Picchu, that's the Burj Khalifa, that's a temple in Taiwan, and so on. I got to go to a lot of different places, and almost always the question that I got from a lot of people was, how can you possibly do this? Like, don't you have a job? Like, aren't you in a normal thing? And I would tell them, no, I don't, actually. I haven't been in the fiat economy for quite some time. And that's sort of like mind-blowing for a lot of people because they don't think that you can escape. And that's what I call the golden handcuffs. It's this mentality that we're trapped in as a result of being in the fiat system for a very long time. I liken these golden handcuffs to Hotel California. If you're familiar with this song from the Eagles, it is all about how you can check in anytime you like, or you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave, right? And that's what the fiat system is very much like. It's very attractive in many ways. You get a salary, you get various benefits like healthcare and so on. It's also more or less voluntary. You volunteer to work at a particular job, so it seems pretty market-driven. But there's like a persistent debasement of your work life, right? And that's something that a lot of people feel as they like sort of stay in a corporation for a while, especially if a corporation is 20, 30 years old. You start to feel that debasement going on. There's a lot of bureaucracy. There's a lot of turf handling and stuff like that. There's a lot of status games. And a lot of people are afraid to leave because of this sunk cost. They feel kind of stuck. They feel trapped. And they don't feel like they can really leave. And ultimately, they are stuck, in part because of these things, like having a mortgage, right? Or having student loans, like you went to university many years ago and you have these loans that you can't pay off. Or having credit card debt. So what you end up having to do as a result of all of that is having to work late nights and doing whatever it takes to sort of like take that burden off. And you continue doing that, not necessarily because you love doing these things, but because it is what you're used to. And the mechanisms for sort of trapping you in the fiat world are, essentially access to debt. Most people have access to lots of debt, especially if you have sort of a job at a company and are on a salary. You can, apply for mortgages much easier. Credit score is higher, and you get lots of benefits besides the ones explicit at your work. You also get healthcare and retirement, and those are sort of like dangled like carrots to you, so that if anything bad happens to you, you can always go and get, emergency care or doctors or something like that. And, once you retire, you'll be taken care of. Those are sort of the carrots held before you in any kind of fiat job. And of course, there's the career and status to consider, which is important to a lot of people. They're thought of well by the people that are around them, and ultimately, they don't want this social ostracization of not being in a corporation, not having a normal job, and so on. This is Tae-young-ho, and he is the highest-ranking North Korean defector ever to have defected from North Korea. He was the ambassador to England and I believe Sweden at one point. He's one of those people that has a very interesting perspective because he's both experienced the brutalities of growing up in North Korea, but also been outside. And he managed to defect. And I got to talk to him a couple of years ago. I guess it was like 4 years ago at the Oslo Freedom Forum. And we had this very interesting conversation. He told me about the society of North Korea and how it came into being. And one of the things that he pointed out was that Kim Il-sung, who was sort of the great leader of North Korea, he came to power more or less because he was willing to do what other people weren't. And that's not just like brutality, but he gave away a lot of stuff for free. So healthcare, you're going to get it for free. A job, you're going to get it for free. A house, you're going to get it for free. All of these things were given away, and at least initially, he was very popular as a result of that. And that's something that not a lot of people know. And when you're popular, you're able to sort of like gather power, and that was his strategy. But what happened then? Well, after you give away a lot of this stuff for free, you start running out of resources. So maybe you start running out of medicine, right? And you go to the doctor and they say, well, we don't actually have any medicine for you. So the healthcare that you signed up for isn't quite as good as you thought it would be. And one of the things that he pointed out is that the thing about all of this free stuff is that it comes at a cost, just not one to your pocketbook. It comes at the cost of compliance. And that was very interesting to me because I was thinking about during that conversation, well, what are we getting for free, right? What stuff do we get for free? Well, we get Gmail for free, right? We get like Facebook for free. What's happening there? Well, we can only be on those platforms as long as we're compliant as well. And that's the real cost of this fiat system that I want to point out, is that really So much of it is based on compliance. There was during the pandemic, there were some tweets being put out by people that were on the pro-vaccination side saying, "Hey, if you don't get vaccinated, you shouldn't get access to healthcare services." And this was a common sentiment among the people that were sort of radically pro-vaccine and so on. This is essentially what happens with free stuff, is that it comes with strings attached. You have to comply to the will of those that are wanting you to do certain things. And it sort of corrupts your beliefs and values, because the compliance requires you to believe certain things, to value certain things, to want certain things, to essentially comply with their values. And that's something that subtly sort of changes how you view the world and how you interact with the world. And ultimately, that comes in the form of authoritarian rule, because once you're compliant enough, well, then they can more or less say anything that they want, and you'll comply because you're so used to it. It's a slow frog boiling in a pot kind of thing. And what's even worse is that at some point you start having Stockholm syndrome. The very people that oppress you, the very people that force this compliance, you start loving because you know no other way, right? Like, you've lost a large part of your soul. You've lost a large part of yourself. Now, what I've just sort of described to you is very bleak. So how do we break out of these chains, right? How do we stop being a part of this fiat society? And thankfully, we have the technology, right, as we say, to start breaking out. And escaping from the fiat system, escaping from the matrix, requires some level of planning. So the first thing to do, the thing that's perhaps one of the more important ones, is to save and get out of debt. It is the debt that is holding you down. It is the debt that is keeping you in the same place. It is the debt that more or less gets you to come into work every day. But if you can get out of debt and start saving, well, now you have some leverage. You don't have to do the things that they say. You don't have to believe the things that they believe. You don't have to comply with the things that they want you to comply on. Second, pay for value. So that conversation with Tae Young-ho was very impactful for me, because what he said at the end was that there is something sacred about market transactions. When you get something for free, you have to pay in some other way. You have to pay through compliance. You have to pay by doing things that they want you to. And in a sense, those are more costly than the dollars that, or the, whatever value you're giving in a market transaction. When you get something and you pay for it, there's an obligation on the other party to satisfy you. Whereas if you're getting something for free, they don't really care. Why? Because you're the product. You're the product. So to get out of this thing, out of the fiat system, I think it's very important to start paying for value. This is why I don't really care that much that Elon Musk is charging $8 a month to get like a blue check or whatever. In a sense, you should be willing to pay for it because you're going to get more services from the person that's providing it for you rather than getting it for free. Third, learn personal responsibility. And this is something that gets lost in the midst of all of this compliance and free stuff, is that we lose our agency to some degree. We stop learning how to take care of ourselves and depend on those that would take care of us, from those that are more or less faceless corporations and governments that promise us free things. Instead, I think it's important to embrace personal responsibility and to learn how to do things ourselves. And ultimately, to really escape, we need to be looking for opportunities. There's a lot of people that sort of complain about the lack of Bitcoin company jobs. And to some degree, I sympathize with them, because it is hard to get a job in the Bitcoin industry. We're not flush with VC money. We're not flush with Cantillon effects and so on. It is very difficult sometimes to get into the industry. But at the same time, like, isn't that what you should expect? If you're working in a fiat job, there's going to be a significant rent-seeking component. And that means that it's going to be significantly easier to perform because you're part of the money spigot that's coming out. escaping means that you need to actually provide value. And escaping means that you need to look for opportunities where you can provide a lot of value, because that's what's going to pay. So instead of looking for a Bitcoin job per se, I say look for where you can provide value, actual goods and services to the market. Be an entrepreneur, start your own business, because ultimately that's what's going to free you from this fiat matrix. Now, I want to tell a story here about how I came to start my own thing, because my last fiat job was in 2017. I was working for a company called Paxos. And I was still in the Bitcoin industry, broadly speaking, and I was doing interesting things. And from the outside looking in, I had a very good job. I was working remotely. I was in Austin. The company was in New York. I only went in maybe once every quarter or so. So, it was very comfortable in that way. I also got paid a lot of money, so that was nice. I had good health care. They had a good, 401k plan and all that stuff. But I realized that there was something missing, in the sense that I was constrained by on my opinions on how I can conduct myself and so on, because ultimately I was in a way representing the company. And I had an idea for a business, but I was afraid to execute on it. And a large part of that is that fear that I won't succeed. So for a while there, it took me some time to work up the courage, to work up the gumption to go out and do my own thing. I had this idea about teaching seminars to developers that wanted to learn about the Bitcoin protocol. And I was like, okay, what if nobody comes? What am I going to do? And I was so afraid of failure that it took me a month to just say, I'm going to go and do it. But I did do it. And as soon as I did it, I knew that I could never go back, because the world is not like this frozen wasteland that you believe it to be. It's actually full of opportunity. And this is the thing about entrepreneurship. A lot of people are afraid of it. But to really escape from the fiat system, this is what we need to embrace. It is this idea of providing goods and services directly to the market. This was the normal state of affairs for a very long time. It's only in the modern fiat era that you have giant corporations. They're very unnatural, and I cover this a lot in my book. But like corporations that are above 150 people, there's no way you can know what everyone is doing. They're very inefficient. They're very difficult to steer, and they're very hard to get to do new things and so on. So entrepreneurs have a lot of advantages. It's only because of the presence of fiat money that large companies win. So here's my advice as far as going and finding some good or service that you can provide something to the market. Find something that you're good at. And usually you can figure this out because people are constantly asking you to do this for them. Hey, can you help me organize this party? Or hey, I heard you're good at this. Can you help me do this? Or whatever. If you're constantly being asked to do something for people, there's a good chance that they'll also pay you to do it, because honestly, they probably don't know that many people that know what you're able to do. Second, get in a community. There is sort of like a desire, I guess, for a lot of people to sort of like disconnect, and that's part of the attraction of a fiat job, is that you could kind of check out, right? It's like Hotel California. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. You can check out. You could be, if you're like, at least in my industry as a coder, you could be a cafeteria coder at Facebook and make lots of money for a long time, and you can get your peers on a 360-degree review, like just make deals with them so that you're always constantly getting good reviews and so on, and work the system and be a rent seeker for a long time. But in a sense, that's a very empty kind of existence. The path of entrepreneurship is much more deeply embedded within a community. You have to get to know the people in your community and provide a good or service that they want. And that means that there is probably going to be more conflict, but there's also going to be a lot more satisfaction when you provide a good or service that they actually need. And one of the great joys of my life is watching people that have taken my course go on and do wonderful things in this community. They've contributed to lots of different open source projects. They've been hired by lots of companies. They started a lot of companies. This is what you can do for Bitcoin, is ultimately providing a good or service to other people. And this is something that I think a lot of people that have started their own businesses know. You need to charge money, and not a small amount either. The weird thing about entrepreneurship that you realize is that the people that you charge the most appreciate you the most. The people that you charge the least appreciate you the least. They're the most likely to complain. They're the most likely to ask for a refund. They're the most likely to make trouble. And it kind of makes sense once you think about it a little bit. The people that are willing to pay you a lot of money to go do something obviously see the value. The people that you have to give a discount to, they don't necessarily see the value. So my advice when you're starting something is, find somebody that really wants your product and then charge them a sufficient amount of money, and don't worry too much about getting the low end. Pick off the low-hanging fruit first, I guess. And finally, don't take on debt. And this one is a little bit controversial because I know we have some VCs in the room and so on. And I count like venture capital investment as oftentimes being like debt because they're the ones that get paid out first in any kind of term sheet and so on. But taking on debt has this effect of giving them a stake in whatever it is that you're doing. And you end up serving the person that owns your debt and not necessarily yourself. And I've seen too many companies go under because they felt the need to do what the VCs wanted rather than what would work. So I want to finish off this presentation with this picture, and this is it's a tale of two cities, right? These are two cities in the world. The one on the left is Paris, and the one on the right is Brasilia, and they both have very different stories. So Paris was a city that was built sort of organically. It was one house at a time, one street at a time, one block at a time, and so on. And eventually, it became this sort of worldwide tourist destination. The one on the right is Brasilia. This was a planned city. This was a city that the government of Brazil decided would be the capital of Brazil. So they created this place and they planned it all out from a central sort of like top-down approach. Now, look at these two places. Which place would you rather live? Right? There is something about a decentralized place where lots of people are actively trying to make things that are of value to other people that is very valuable. And you get vibrancy, you get value, you get livability in those places. The other place looks like a prison, right? It looks like a prison because it kind of is. It's top down. It's centrally controlled. It's a bureaucrat that decided, okay, this building needs to go there and this building needs to go there. It's usually a concrete nightmare. The streets are way too wide. It's not livable. It's not walkable. You have to drive everywhere. This is what you get when you have people that are centrally planning. And I want you to realize that the situation that we find ourselves today with respect to the corporate world is much more like the one on the right than the left. We have a situation where like 5 big corporations in every industry dominate everything, and this is true in almost every country. It's you have to have scale under fiat money to survive, but we're transitioning to a more Bitcoin standard. We're going to go towards a more decentralized world, and in that world, you need more entrepreneurs. You need more courage. You need more people that are willing to to provide goods and services, to take a risk. And that's the vision that we have for this community, is to become more like Paris and less like Brasilia. Everything, if you want a copy of my new book, it's fiatruinseverything.com. Thank you very much.